Hi, I'm Naomi, my channel is La Fraise and welcome to this new video. Today I wanted to share with you my first and my second me made. So this is all the way back in December 2020 or 2021. I feel like I started in 2020 and 2020, but it was in December because I got my sewing machine for Christmas, even though I did get it a couple of days before Christmas because lockdown, so it was an emergency, so I did get it a little bit earlier. And then most of 2021 was my sewing year, and I guess that makes sense in the dates. Yeah, I just went to check, it was bugging me. It is. So I got it on the 4th of December 2020. So let's get cracking. Here's my very first me made. And this is this little pouch that I made following a YouTube tutorial. I'm gonna try not to rattle it too much. What I did not understand and realize when I was making it, because I made it, you know, with a zipper that I salvaged from a second-hand skirt, I really thought it was going to be this long, but then I was like, oh, I'm gonna make the corners really chunky. And I didn't understand at the time. I mean, I understood as soon as I made it, that's how I learned, that if you make the corners very chunky, then the zipper doesn't go, I mean, it still goes all the way, but if you want it's not like flat like this in a very long pouch, the fact that you make the corners chunky shortens it, and so that's why it's a little box almost. So then I realized, oh, it's too small to put any pens in, like you can't put pencils and pens. So in the end I was like, what am I going to do with this, because this is a really awkward shape. Well, this is where my threads live, my threads and all my bias tape makers. I have three different sizes, so my threads and my bias tape maker live in there, which is super convenient. It's also not too big, so once it starts to be a bit difficult to shut, I know that I need to start working on using up my threads. And by the way, the only threads I have in here at the moment are my big black and white, a deep rust, and two lighter ones. Is one of those stretchy? Is that why I have two? No, it's not. Well, I just have two off-whites apparently. Don't know why I bought two, but here we are. So that's everything that's in there. So I actually have other colors going on. There's obviously one that's on my sewing machine at the moment. And because I have many cut projects at the moment, what I tend to do is I put the corresponding color with the cut project. This way it's all clear. But as you can see, I'm pretty good at using up my threads that are no longer used for a project or something. I use them for PJs inside or t-shirts inside if it's a less fancy t-shirt. For my underwear, because I make my own undies, there I used all of my leftover threads. So if you look at the colors inside the undies, it's Frankenstein threads in there, but I'm just using up all my leftovers. And because you do a lot of zigzags in underwear, it uses up a lot of thread, so that's great. Also in my patchwork dress, I zigzagged everything inside, and that was actually a beast for using up leftover threads, so I used a lot in there as well. So then we come to my second project, and you might think, what do you do after you make a little zipper pouch? And now that I know what I made, I'm like, I know this is not really obvious as a choice, but I will explain the reasoning. And I just want to be fully transparent. So the zipper pouch was my first fully made project, and I had also hemmed the top that I got from the second-hand store. So what I had done is that I had bought a few things from the second-hand store from the 50 cents bin, and I had like unpicked them and trying to reverse engineer what was happening, and that's also how I learned. So for example, I unpicked the zipper that ends up on this little pouch here, and I had this top, and it was a whole dress, and I decided to hem it. So I tried to learn to hem. Now that I see the way it's done, it's awful. Also, it was a pink top, and I hemmed it in bright red threads, so it was quite something. Also, it was a stretch top, and I used a straight stitch on it, so you know, I was just experimenting and learning. Also experimenting and learning with different fibers and different stretch material. So counting that aside, my second fully me-made project was this shirt for my wife. And honestly, it's a story I love because it just shows how beginners, not luck, but beginners' ignorance is everything. Because if you asked me now, I'm starting to sew, what should I start making? Would I say start by making a shirt? I would also like to add that this shirt I made without a pattern. I copied it from an existing shirt and I made it all myself. It's a bit mad, but I will show you all the details that are not so great about it, but I'm still extremely proud of it because it really taught me so much. So the reason why I made this shirt, in my head it was kind of a wearable muslin. Now I realize it makes no sense. I bought a fabric which was my pretty fabric, which was cheaper than this one. So actually my muslin was in a more expensive fabric than my final shirt. And also I was like, oh, I'm gonna make this muslin, copying a shirt I have, and then the actual shirt I'm gonna make is gonna be from a pattern book I had learned. So I also learned a lot by buying a book. And you know, one of those books that have a ton of patterns in the back, and so that's how I started, by using the patterns in the back, which is I think also why I'm team trace, because when you start with a book, obviously you need to trace your size because all of the patterns are jumbled together and you can't just cut through, otherwise you sacrifice 10 pieces of patterns for the one, you know. I mean, yeah, if you've ever used a book, you know that you can't really cut through that because all the patterns are mixed up together. But so I thought it was very logic to first copy a shirt in an expensive fabric. I mean, it wasn't expensive, this is a cotton, but in a more expensive fabric to prepare myself for following a pattern in a cheaper fabric. To make this, I based myself heavily on my sewing book that I had bought, and I looked at how the lady made a shirt, and that was how I informed a lot of my decision. But I also looked a lot at the original shirt I had. It's actually my wife's, so this was my wife's shirt and this is hers as well. The reason why I was copying the shirt is because it was her favorite shirt and it was handmade by someone at some point. It was clearly a homemade product. You could see it from the seams, and it was a little bit falling apart, but like even the fabric you could almost see through, you know, it was so old. So thinking, oh, this shirt is one day gonna die, I would like a copy. And this is how I came to make this. So I'm gonna try to show you all the little things. So first, and now I realize, now that I understand a lot more, and I have not really come back to this shirt since I made it. So it's very interesting for me to see what was happening in my head. But now I'm like, definitely this person who made this shirt was piecing and they didn't have enough fabric because they have a seam in the back. So I copied the shirt exactly like it was. I have a seam in the back. I don't know if you can see it. It's there. I have a seam down there. So it's like, sure, the shirt has a seam. I make a seam. There's also a seam here. I don't know if you can see it well at all because the print quite busy. There's a seam and there's a dart, and there's another dart here. There's a bust dart here and there's a waist dart here, another one there. And one thing I know I didn't do is add the darts in the pattern. So I saw this video from With Wendy, which is about copying your clothes, and so she showed how to do this on a t-shirt. It was like, well, you know, front, back, sleeves, and you just add the color, and you know, I did it on all the pieces. I copied this shirt following the tutorial from With Wendy, even though she was showing it on a t-shirt, and it was much easier on a t-shirt. But for example, I did not add the darts in my pattern, so actually the shirt must be more fitted than the original one because I did add the dart here. I think the side dart I might have because it still lines up, so, and I would have understood how that works. But how did I do with the waist dart? No clue. I think you know, I remember measuring. I really remember measuring the width of the dart inside to copy it. So I know that I copied the dart well, but I don't think I added it to the pattern at all. So, mystery. I also made my collar in a very rustic manner, as you can see. And for my defense, this is how it was in the original shirt, and I just copied the original shirt. And that's something I'm not very happy about because you can really see the raw edge here, but that's again copied from the original. And the original had, again, and I'm like, well, they didn't have enough fabric, but they had this little add-on in the facing. The facing was not in one piece, and I wanted to copy that too and add a little contrasting. Very good idea, really makes it super subtle. Oh, well done, Noemi. It's funny because when I started sewing, I really thought that there were the easy colors like this and the fancy colors like I was learning in the book, where you obviously fold, you know, you sew one side and then you fold it over so that everything is enclosed. And I really thought that this was a method and that there was the other method. I mean, obviously it is a method, but I don't think it is a particularly successful one or happy one, because look there. I mean, I don't think it's so visible when it's worn, but clearly there's a lot of raw edges here. And like, yeah, it's fine when it's worn, but it's not the neatest really. I mean, it's good because I think if I had had to make a proper color in my first shirt, it would never have worked. So I'm really lucky that I was actually copying something that wasn't too hard, and I, you know, out of sheer luck, because I wasn't able to look at a garment and think, oh, it's not too hard. I mean, I remember looking at her shirt and thinking, I think I could do that. Maybe if I had not seen the seam, I would have not felt as confident that I could make it. But because I could see the seams of everything, I could look and I could see what was what. And I could even look at seams overlapping and see which one was made first, you know? So I could really copy the shirt exactly like it was made, because I had the original that was telling me everything I needed to know. So this is my first shirt. It's not perfect, but I'm extremely proud of it, and it gave me so much confidence for the month to come. I think it gave me maybe too much confidence. I made this and I thought, wow, I'm gonna make amazing things in 2 weeks, because if this is my first project, I'm clearly brilliant and amazing. And I have to say, it took a while, and it also took accepting to slow down, because actually, you know, well, this is a shirt, well done, I still make shirts, but the difference in the shirts I make now is that they're better finished. So it's not that you make more impressive garments, it's that if you look at the details, they're better made. Also something, I made my buttons on the sewing machine, and then I just cut the thread, and so what's coming to bite me in the ass now, I think you can see the threads. So yeah, that's not ideal, is it? So yeah, but I'm still very proud of that shirt and very happy that it started me on this sewing journey. So I really hope that seeing this is giving you confidence into the fact that you don't need to start sewing by making a pillowcase. I can't bring myself to make stuff I don't want to make. So I was like, okay, well, I've made a pouch, now I'm making a shirt, and you can also do that. And yes, it's not going to be your most beautiful shirt, and yes, it took me an insane amount of time to make. I don't even want to know, but I couldn't compare with anything, so it didn't seem long. Also, I was having so much fun, so it didn't seem long to make because I was enjoying the process. I remember at night I would wake up and get out of bed and go and look at my wife's shirt, the original, because I was thinking, and I was like, oh, but what about this? I need to go and look at the shirt, and it would kind of like haunt me. I was really like, oh, constantly thinking about it and thinking about the construction. That's something I really like, you know, thinking about the logic behind things. I mean, I feel like as sewists, we engineers almost, which, you know, it's quite fun. So I really enjoyed those two projects and all the projects that came afterwards, and I'm really happy to share those with you. I also want to have a quick story time to talk about my first two experiences with sewing. When I was young, my mom would make costumes for my brothers when they were going to camp with scouts. And at camp, they have a costume night, and so they needed a costume every year for that. There was a theme and everything, and she would make the costumes. And so one day, my brother was an elf, and so she had bought tulle to make his wings, and she had extra tulle, and she had told me she would make me a skirt from it. And I realized she was going to take the whole tulle, gather it, and it was going to be a skirt, and it would have been quick and easy for her, you know, just an elastic, and that was it. I really wanted to help, and I was already creative, and I wanted to do it. So I took, oh my goodness, it still hurts thinking about it. I took the tulle and I stretched it around my hips like this, stretch it as much as possible, and I cut through. And not only did I cut through, but I cut through like this because I couldn't cut straight because I was very young. And then my mom arrived and she was like, what did you do? Because obviously if she was going to gather the waist to have space, you know, I really like stretched it. I was like, oh, I'm going to cut it to my size. And so this tulle, and I was so upset, and I begged my mom to go to the store to buy more tulle to make me the skirt. And she was like, well, no, it was a skirt that you were going to get from leftovers, and you cut through them. And I can still see in my mind this cut that was going like all across, you know, I had really ruined the whole thing. Obviously, it's, I mean, you know, and I just ruined it. And so my first experience with sewing was a big disaster. I was super upset I never got that skirt and that it was all ruined. So yeah, so that was a sewing story that started in pain. And then at some point when I was a teenager, so the desire to sew had been there a lot, but I had always been told that I wasn't very crafty. I was a dancer coming up, and it was always like, Noemi, she's really good with her body, she's a dancer, she's a good actor, etc. But she can't craft, she's not crafty. And it's true that I was never very patient, and if you're not patient as a child, it doesn't help with crafts. But so, again, I was like, I want to learn to sew, and I had seen this TV show. I mean, it was, you know, those TV programs in the afternoon that like show you house things and stuff. And one thing they showed was how easy it is to sew a circle skirt. So, you know, the fact that you measure your waist, blah, 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 you draw the line, you cut, you hem, you put a belt, and it's done. So I was like, great, I'm gonna make a circle skirt. And I went into my grandma's stash to find a fabric. And here I feel like my mom didn't advise me well at all. I mean, I don't want to blame it on my mom, but at the same time, I'm like, she knows how to sew and she should, I don't know. But at the same time, I don't remember well, and maybe I was very stubborn and maybe I said I want that fabric. But I remember I chose a fabric that was very heavy and extremely stretchy. I don't even know what it could have been scuba, you know, like really extremely stretchy and super thick. So not a jersey, not a cotton, like it was still shiny, but thick and stretchy. And then I was trying to make my very first circle skirt out of this, but obviously, also I don't think I was using a zigzag stitch. I was trying to do it like a straight, like a plain woven fabric that didn't have stretch. You can imagine the disaster when your very first project is stretching in all the direction. I mean, I don't even know, I don't think I finished it. I don't know what happened to it. I think I tried to cut it. It was already kind of bad, and then I remember going to the sewing machine, and then I don't remember what happened, but I think I gave up pretty much. So these were my starts with sewing, which wasn't great, but I think years and years later, my wife really said, like, you know, if you want to sew, like whatever you did in the past and whatever you were told in the past, you can try. You can pick up a machine, you can learn, you can follow books, you can follow classes. The mistakes I had in the past were because I didn't understand. And also this really taught me that if you want a gathered skirt, you should not cut it straight at your waist, and especially not in diagonal. So those were painful learning experiences, but that still, you know, helped me today because I will never forget those two. But also it was so nice to discover that it's not because in your head you are not meant for something that you aren't meant for it. You know, I tell you at the end of every video that you can make anything, and I truly believe it. I also for very long thought I could not knit, and that still came from the belief that I can't do anything with my hands. And people were like, oh, but you can sew, like you sew super well, so why can't you knit? And it's like, yeah, but sewing the machines does it for you. I can't knit because I can't do anything with my hands. And again, no, I'm knitting, it's not so hard. You pick up the stitch, I mean, you know, you learn how to do the stitches, you practice a bit, and then it's done. And I just get so frustrated at the limiting beliefs we can have, because it harms only yourself in the end. And I'm just really sad that younger me really had those limiting beliefs. I mean, it's fine, I was doing other things, I was dancing, I was having a lot of fun, but I also fully believed I was not capable of doing what I'm doing now. And so I don't know, I'm really happy to have proven myself that I can do it, and I really want you to believe in yourself too, because if you want to learn something, you can learn something. Even more manual, I'm learning to paint, and you know, sewing is easy. You follow the pattern, you put A, B together, and that's done. Painting, you really need to add a bit of creative flair, so it's even harder and even more frustrating in a way. So again, if I can sew, if I can knit, and if I can paint, you can definitely make anything. I'm very curious to know what was your first project and maybe second if you're proudest of the second. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and don't forget that you can make anything. Bye!